Welcome back to Talk Tensors. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a paper that really caught my eye. It's called VECT-GAN, a variationally encoded generative model for overcoming data scarcity in pharmaceutical science. And, I love it when researchers tackle those big real-world problems using machine learning, and this one hits close to home for so many of us.
Absolutely. The lack of data is a massive bottleneck in pharmaceutical research, and this paper presents a potential solution with VECT-GAN.
Okay, so before we unpack VECT-GAN itself, let's set the stage a little bit. What makes data scarcity such a roadblock in this field in particular? I mean, we talk about data needs in ML all the time, but what's unique here?
Well, it all comes down to the sheer complexity and cost of developing new drugs and delivery systems.
Yeah.
Generating a single data point can involve years of lab work, clinical trials, millions, if not billions of dollars.
Yeah, it's not like tweaking a few lines of code and seeing what happens, that's for sure.
Exactly. Traditional research methods, even with, advancements in technology, they're still painstakingly slow. It's like searching for a needle in a haystack.
So we see the potential for ML to really change the game, but it's starving for the data it needs to learn and make those breakthroughs. That's where VECT-GAN comes in, right? And it's not just about creating more data, it's about generating the right kind of data.
You hit the nail on the head. VECT-GAN is a hybrid model. It combines the strengths of two powerful AI techniques we talk about a lot: variational autoencoders, or VAEs, and then generative adversarial networks, those feisty GANs we all know and love.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by how researchers combine different techniques in new ways. It's like they're taking the best tools from their AI toolbox and crafting something entirely new. So how do these two powerhouses play together in VECT-GAN?
Okay, well, think of VAEs as like the organizers of the data world. They excel at learning the fundamental patterns and structure within a data set. They compress that knowledge into what we call a latent space.
Okay, latent space. That's a term we throw around a lot in ML. Could you break that down a bit more for our listeners? What's happening in this mysterious space?
All right, well, imagine taking a complex 3D object and projecting its shadow onto a flat surface. That 2D shadow is a simplified representation of the original object, right? It captures some of its essential features.
So the latent space is like a lower dimensional shadow that still holds the essence of the original data.
Precisely. And the beauty of VAEs is that they can work in reverse, too. They can take a point from that simplified latent space and reconstruct a full data point, almost like bringing that shadow back to life in 3D.
That's pretty incredible. So the VAE sets the stage by learning these core data patterns. Where do GANs come in?
Well, GANs are the artists in this scenario. Remember, a GAN consists of a generator that creates new data and a discriminator that tries to distinguish between real and fake data. They go through this back and forth training process, pushing each other to improve.
It's like an intense game of chess where both players are constantly learning and adapting their strategies.
Exactly. And in VC-GAN, the generator draws upon the latent space representation learned by the VAE to create synthetic data points. The discriminator then helps ensure these generated points look and feel like they belong with the original real data.
So this brings us to the experiments. These researchers put VECT-GAN through its paces, testing it on some real-world pharmaceutical data sets. Tell me, were the results as groundbreaking as the concept itself?
They were indeed. One of the datasets they used focused on mucoadhesive polymers. These are materials designed to stick to mucosal surfaces like your mouth or your intestines.
Ah, I see where this is going. Delivering medications effectively is all about getting them to the right place in the body.
Exactly. These polymers are key for creating effective drug delivery systems. Now, the researchers started with a tiny dataset, only 79 polymers and their adhesion times.
That's barely a drop in the bucket for training a hungry ML model.
Right, so they used VCTT-GEN to generate a whole bunch of synthetic data, bolstering the size of their dataset. With this synthetic boost, their predictive model's accuracy in estimating polymer adhesion time went way up.
Okay, so that's a win for using synthetic data. But they didn't stop there, did they?
Nope, they took things a step further. Based on the predictions from their VECT-GAN boosted model, they actually synthesized new polymers in the lab.
Hold on. They're making real-world materials based on the output of a model trained on synthetic data.
They did. And the experimental results for these brand new polymers actually matched the model's predictions really well.
Wow. Now that's what I call closing the loop between the digital and the physical world. It's not just about numbers on a screen. It's about making a real impact in the lab. This is where things start to get really exciting.
Absolutely. And this was just one example. They tested VECT-GAN on several other challenging pharmaceutical data sets too, like those related to self-emulsifying drug delivery systems, which help deliver poorly soluble drugs, and even predicting drug solubility itself, a notoriously difficult property to get right.
So across the board, VCT-GAN demonstrated its ability to tackle these diverse challenges in pharmaceutical research.
Yes, and it gets even more interesting. The synthetic data generated by VCT-GAN wasn't just mimicking the real data. It was also exploring a wider range of possibilities, which is key for building robust models that can handle the unexpected.
Oh, so it's not just about quantity, but also about the diversity and richness of the data itself. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think we've laid a great foundation here. In part 2, we'll delve deeper into the technical nuts and bolts of VCT-GAN and how it achieves these remarkable results. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Talk Tensors. I'm ready to unpack the inner workings of VCT-GAN.
Me too. In part 1, we saw how VCT-GAN tackles the data scarcity issue in pharmaceutical research. But now let's zoom in and explore the clever mechanics that make it all possible.
All right, so we touched upon VCT-GAN combining variational autoencoders, VAEs, and generative adversarial networks, GANs. To really grasp its power, we need to break down these techniques a bit further, especially for those listeners who might be new to them.
Let's do it. We're all about making complex ML concepts accessible here at Talk Tensors.
Excellent. Now, imagine a VAE as a sophisticated compression algorithm. It's like a zip file for your data. You feed it a bunch of complex data, and it learns to represent this information in a much smaller, condensed form, what we call the latent space.
Okay, so the VAE is essentially finding the hidden essence, the core patterns within a messy data set.
Exactly. And the fascinating part is it doesn't just compress, it can also decompress. Given a point in this latent space, the VAE can reconstruct a full data point. It's like having a blueprint that lets you recreate the original structure.
So the VAE is building this blueprint of the data's core features in the latent space. But how does that actually lead to creating new data? That's where the GAN comes in, right?
Precisely. The GAN has two parts. The generator, which tries to create new realistic data, and the discriminator, which tries to tell the real data from the fake data. They're locked in this training battle, constantly pushing each other to get better.
It's like a never-ending arms race, where each side is trying to outsmart the other. The generator is getting sneakier at making fakes, and the discriminator is getting more discerning.
That's a great analogy. And VCT-GAN leverages this adversarial training process. The generator taps into the latent space representation learned by the VAE to craft new data points. Then the discriminator chimes in, making sure these generated points fit in seamlessly with the real ones.
Okay, I'm starting to see the synergy here. But VCT-GAN doesn't just slap these two techniques together. It brings some unique tricks to the table, right?
Absolutely. One of the key innovations here is conditional generation. This means we can guide the model to generate synthetic data that meets specific criteria.
So we're not just generating random data points. We're giving the model some direction, some intention. That's powerful. Can you give us a concrete example?
Imagine you're researching a new drug that needs to bind to a specific protein target. With VCT-GAN, you can train the model to generate synthetic data that represents molecules with a high affinity for that specific protein.
Oh, wow. So instead of blindly searching through millions of potential molecules, you're using VCT-GAN to create a targeted set of candidates that are more likely to hit the mark, that could save researchers a ton of time and resources.
Exactly. Another innovation that sets VCT-GAN apart is knowledge distillation. Before even tackling the target datasets, the researchers pre-trained VCT-GAN on Schembel, a massive database containing information on millions of drug-like molecules.
So it's like giving the model a crash course in the world of chemistry and drug development before setting it loose on a specific research problem.
Precisely. This pre-training imbues VCT-GAN with a deeper understanding of molecular structures and their properties. As a result, it can generate more realistic and relevant synthetic data, even when the target dataset is quite small.
That pre-training step seems crucial. It's not just about throwing any old data at the model. It's about giving it the right foundational knowledge. Now, we've been talking a lot about data in general. Let's get specific. What kind of data is VCT-GAN particularly good at handling?
VCT-GAN excels at working with tabular data, which is extremely common in pharmaceutical research. Think of it like a spreadsheet with rows and columns representing different features of the molecules, drugs, or patients being studied.
Well, that makes sense. Tabular data is everywhere in science, but it can be tricky to work with. because it often contains a mix of numerical and categorical variables.
You're right, it can be tricky, but that's where VECT-GAN shines. It's designed to handle all those different data types gracefully. It employs specific techniques like Gaussian mixture modeling for continuous variables and one-hot encoding for categorical ones.
So it's a versatile model that can adapt to the diverse landscape of tabular data. Now, for our more technically inclined listeners, I'm curious about the training process itself. How do we go from raw data to a fully trained VECT-GAN model?
Well, the training process involves feeding the model a set of real data and letting it learn the underlying patterns. The VAE part kicks things off, compressing the data into that latent space representation we talked about.
Yeah.
Then the GAN takes over, with the generator trying to create new data points from this latent space, and the discriminator working hard to spot the fakes.
It's a fascinating dance between these two components, pushing each other to refine their abilities.
Hmm.
But training these complex models can be computationally demanding, right?
It can be, but that's a one-time cost. Once trained, VECT-GAN can churn out synthetic data extremely quickly. That's a huge advantage over traditional methods, which might require months or even years to gather the same amount of data.
That speed could be a game changer and feels like drug discovery, where time is of the essence. Now, I understand that the researchers behind VECT-GAN have generously made their model and pre-trained weights publicly available. What does this open science approach mean for the wider research community?
Well, it's a fantastic development. It allows researchers all over the world to jump in, explore new applications of VECT-GAN, and contribute to its advancement. It democratizes access to this powerful tool, which could lead to a surge of innovation in pharmaceutical research and beyond.
It's wonderful to see researchers embracing this collaborative spirit. Now, before we move on to part 3, where we'll discuss some intriguing novel notions inspired by VECT-GAN, I think it's essential to talk about the potential limitations or challenges associated with using synthetic data. What are your thoughts?
Of course, it's crucial to be aware of potential pitfalls. One concern is ensuring that the synthetic data accurately reflects the real world. If the original data used to train the model is biased or incomplete, those flaws could be reflected in the synthetic data as well.
So, garbage in, garbage out, as the saying goes.
Exactly. It's important to start with high-quality, representative, real data, and to carefully validate the synthetic data to ensure it meets the necessary standards. Researchers also need to be vigilant about protecting sensitive information that might be hidden within the data.
Those are important considerations. We'll delve deeper into these challenges and the broader ethical implications of synthetic data in part 3. Stay tuned for some thought-provoking discussions. Welcome back to Talk Tensors for the final part of our deep dive into VECT-GAN.
It's been quite a journey exploring this innovative approach to synthetic data generation.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the clever mechanics of VECT-GAN to its remarkable results on those real-world pharmaceutical data sets.
Yeah, and we even touched upon some potential limitations and ethical considerations, which are always crucial when dealing with powerful new technologies.
Absolutely. Now, in this final part, I want to step back and look at the bigger picture. What are the broader implications of VECT-GAN and synthetic data in general? This technology has the potential to disrupt not just scientific research, but entire industries, economies, even our understanding of knowledge itself.
That's a profound thought. And you're right, the ripple effects of this technology could be felt, far and wide. Let's start with the pharmaceutical industry, which is already facing, immense pressure to develop new treatments faster and more cost effectively.
And VECT-GAN seems tailor-made to address those pressures by accelerating the drug discovery process and reducing the reliance on those costly and time-consuming experiments. It could dramatically reshape the landscape of pharmaceutical research.
Precisely. Imagine a world where researchers can rapidly test millions of potential drug candidates using synthetic data, right? Identifying the most promising leads early on. This could lead to a surge in the development of new treatments, particularly for rare diseases or neglected tropical diseases that haven't received sufficient attention due to economic factors.
It's almost like democratizing access to life-saving medications by lowering the barriers to entry for research and development. That's an incredibly exciting prospect. But of course, with any disruptive technology, there are potential downsides we need to consider.
Absolutely. One concern is the potential for misuse. What happens when bad actors gain access to this technology? Could they use it to create synthetic data to deceive regulatory agencies? generate misleading research findings, or even develop harmful substances.
Those are serious concerns that we need to address proactively.
Yeah.
It highlights the need for clear ethical guidelines, robust regulations, and perhaps even technological safeguards to prevent the malicious use of synthetic data generation tools like VECT-GAN.
Agreed. And beyond the ethical considerations, there are also, economic and societal implications to consider. What happens to the job market as AI-powered tools like VECT-GAN automate more and more tasks traditionally performed by humans? Could we see widespread job displacement in research and development, leading to economic instability?
It's a valid concern, but I think it's important to remember that technological advancements often lead to shifts in the job market rather than outright job elimination. New roles emerge, requiring different skill sets and expertise. The key is to adapt to these changes by investing in education and training programs that equip people with the skills needed to thrive in this evolving landscape.
You're absolutely right. It's about embracing change and ensuring that the benefits of these technologies are shared broadly across society. Now, zooming out even further, let's consider the philosophical implications of synthetic data. What happens to our understanding of knowledge and evidence when we can create vast amounts of realistic data that never actually occurred in the real world?
It's a fascinating question. That strikes at the heart of what we consider to be real. Could we reach a point where the lines between real and synthetic become so blurred that we can no longer discern the origin or veracity of information? It almost feels like we're stepping into a science fiction novel where reality itself is malleable.
It's definitely a thought-provoking scenario, and it highlights the need for robust methods of data verification and provenance tracking. We need to develop ways to ensure the trustworthiness of information, regardless of whether it originated from real-world observations or synthetic data generation. This could involve techniques like digital watermarking, blockchain technology, or even the development of entirely new cryptographic methods specifically tailored for synthetic data.
It's not just about generating data, it's about building systems of trust and accountability in a world where the very nature of evidence is shifting.
Precisely. But perhaps this blurring of lines between real and synthetic isn't entirely a bad thing. Could it also open up new avenues for creativity and innovation? Imagine using synthetic data to explore hypothetical scenarios, test unconventional theories, or even create entirely new realms of knowledge unconstrained by the limitations of the physical world.
That's a mind-bending thought. It suggests that synthetic data could be a catalyst for expanding our understanding of the universe and pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. It's almost like giving scientists and artists alike a new set of tools to explore the infinite possibilities of their respective domains.
It's an exciting prospect, and it highlights the dual nature of this technology. It holds both immense promise and potential peril. The key, as with any powerful tool, is to wield it wisely, responsibly, and with a deep understanding of its implications. We need to engage in thoughtful discussions, develop robust ethical frameworks, and ensure that synthetic data is used for good, empowering us to create a better future for everyone.
Well said. This has been an incredibly insightful and thought-provoking deep dive into VECT-GAN and the wider implications of synthetic data. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure, and I can't wait to see what the future holds for this transformative technology.
And for our listeners, be sure to check the show notes for links to the VECT-GAN paper and other resources mentioned in this episode. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the fascinating world of machine learning.